Hello and a warm welcome to all those tuning into this conversation. This is part of our ongoing series, Let's Talk Policy, that I host for the Kautilya School of Public Policy, which is based in Hyderabad. I'm Smita Sharma. I'm an independent journalist and also a visiting faculty at the Kautilya School of Public Policy, where, just to begin the conversation, let me also highlight that it offers a 2-year master's degree in public policy for those of you who are interested in exploring at a career in public policy. The admissions are on, they're in the last leg right now. Please do feel free to, of course, take a look at the course curriculum, the website, the prospectus, and coming to, of course, this episode of Let's Talk Policy. This is a forum where we try and do a deep dive into important contemporary issues, into policy matters, and how could we not talk about what is playing out in our neighborhood, which is being watched so keenly by everybody, both inside and outside Pakistan. On the 9th of May, what we saw were unprecedented scenes that played out in Pakistan. Now, this is a country, of course, this is a neighboring country that we know. It has not been a stranger ever to chaos, instability, to military coups, to a lot of political upheavals. But why were these scenes unprecedented? Because we saw angry mobs not just take to the streets, but ransack, torch houses that belonged to military officials, including the corps commanders in Lahore. His residence was targeted. A war memorial in Sargodha. So there were these incidents that came out, and it was the first time that we saw in decades that military officials' installations being targeted by people out on the streets. Of course, it is now being debated because the Pakistan Army claims that this was all orchestrated, whereas what was playing out was being projected as spontaneous protests by Imran Khan, the cricketer turned politician who's had a long political inning in Pakistan now, who's also served as the Pakistani Prime Minister, but who lost the vote of confidence, was ousted out of power. Since then, of course, he has not accepted his defeat. He was at loggerheads with the current government, which belongs to the Sharifs, but he has also been daggers drawn when it comes to the Pakistan Army, the ISI, the certain specific officials and individuals actually to talk about it. So how do we read the tea leaves on Pakistan? Why should India also be looking at these developments? How concerned should India be? Importantly, what happens next now? Has Imran Khan actually managed to challenge the might of the Pakistan Army, the ISI, what is known as the establishment, in a way that can maybe course correct the civil military imbalance that has long been talked about being a hurdle to the rise of pure democracy in Pakistan? Or has Imran Khan bitten more than he could chew? And has he now been cut to size? Because in the last few days, since that violence, of course, which played out on the day when Imran Khan was very dramatically arrested at the Islamabad High Court by the Pakistani Rangers, since then, we have seen a lot of arrests happen, detentions happen. He was given bail, but a spate of resignations too of senior faces, including the likes of Shireen Mazari to Fawad Chaudhry, who have now quit the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. So has Imran Khan been cut to size effectively? These are some of the many questions that I'm sure not just I would like to ask, but a lot of the participants who are tuning in today, who themselves are, of course, from research background, students, journalists, scholars. So I would be happy to take your questions along to our panel today. But let me first introduce my panel here. And these are some of the foremost voices when it comes to understanding Pakistan. I have with me Raza Ahmed Rumi. He has been an editor for many, many years with very, in fact, prominent news outlets. He's author of several important books, including Fractious Path, Pakistan's Democratic Transition and Rethinking Pakistan, a 21st Century Perspective, which is actually a collection of essays. He's currently the director at the Park Center for Independent Media at Ithaca College and also a lecturer at Cornell. He's joining us from the United States. Glad to have you, Raza.
Thank you.
I also have with me Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal. He's a retired diplomat, somebody who's also been a former High Commissioner to Pakistan between 2009 and 2013, former ambassador to Uzbekistan. He's authored a book, in fact, in recent times, which is about Pakistan conundrum, managing a complex relationship. Look forward to hearing your insights, Ambassador Sabharwal.
Thank you.
And last but not the least, another very, very incisive voice in Pakistan, Dr. Aisha Siddiqa. She's a very vocal columnist, a commentator, senior fellow at the Department of War Studies, King's College in London. You can read her columns in several outlets. She's also an author of important books. Aisha, very happy to see you after a long time here.
Thank you so much for this invitation.
Let me start by asking your sense, Aisha, as you see, you're in London currently, as you see things play out. What happened on 9th of May? What was your sense? We have heard the Pakistan Army Chief, General Munir, say that this was all orchestrated. What was your sense of what played out? How much of it was spontaneous? How much of it was really civilians, protesters out there on the road? How much of it looked like it had been, there was a pre-conspiracy, it had been pre-planned?
See, my sense of it is that it was a lot of it was organic because I mean, I know that including participants who are here would kind of tend to challenge that, and now government is very fast bringing out evidence claiming that Imran Khan and coterie of his cabal were responsible for trumpeting this violence and calling out for targeting military property, etc. Now, while this may be true, I don't think that there was something very centralized. The operation itself was very centralized. That's number one. And number two, even if they were involved in inciting people, the fact is that that anger which got incited and flared up was already there. Let's not undermine the one basic thing, which is that people in Pakistan are angry, were angry. And this is not something which Imran Khan started. The anger was started much earlier. In fact, if you go back to the lawyers' movement in 2006-07, we kind of begin to see a buildup of that. Then you go to Nawaz Sharif. I mean, how people lapped up when he named two generals, Bajwa and Faiz. People were welcoming of his criticism. People were not saying, you're pointing a finger. Now, of course, Imran Khan and his party crossed a line which the army never imagined would happen. Even the people, I mean, even the observers like me or Raza or many others, never imagined that this would happen. Attacking military property, tearing down symbols of militarism spread out. I mean, while we would for years talked about it and said that, there's a lot of symbolism you can find on the streets, models of copies of Gori missile or aircrafts, etc., etc. Here were these people emotional, angry, tearing it down. And that's where I think it is. So it was a mix of both. Imran Khan, being the kind of leader he is, who didn't believe in negotiation, who was aggressive, who always thought that his way, my way, or the highway, thought he had enough support from within the military and from the streets to actually challenge the military and scare, perhaps. I mean, I'm reminded of this video, by the way, this recording of, I think it was around 2000, 2006, 2007. Imran Khan sitting, and I mean, that is available on the YouTube if you ever Google it. Imran Khan talking to his party members and saying that these generals, and this is in the context of NRO, which Musharraf had signed. So somebody from his party said, oh, but are these generals that bad? I mean, why did they sign the NRO, the National Reconciliation Ordinance, with Benazir Bhutto? And he says that these generals are like that. Bring in 20,000 people and they'll be on their knees. He used a much cruder expression, which I wouldn't repeat. But I think one, that was his understanding that you could bring these generals, and he knows them far longer, He's been in their lap for a very, very long time. So perhaps he understood their psyche a bit more than we do. But that's one phase of it. The other, which I think is the real issue here, is people's anger. So there was an element of genuineness to what happened on May 9th.
Okay, Raza, come in here, and take this forward. Because on the one hand, we have this image of Imran, and I often like to compare that I also see shades of an Arvind Kejriwal style of street politics that we saw before he became Delhi's chief minister. But you also see a large shade of the denialism or naysaying, sign of aspects of Donald Trump after losing elections. There are different shades in Imran Khan, and this is also the Imran Khan which I remember in 2013 when it looked like there was a democratic transition happening in Pakistan. I landed there to cover the elections, and we learned that Imran Khan had fallen off the stage. He was hospitalized to Shaukat Khanum Hospital that he had actually built from scratch, going door to door. And the sea of people, he didn't win that election, but the sea of people out there who were hoping that Imran Khan would usher in a Naya Pakistan. How do you define Imran Khan today, Raza? How do you see his personality? Do you think that he really crossed the red lines when it came to dealing with the army in this round in particular?
Thank you so much, Smita, for having me on this distinguished panel. First of all, and good to see you and Ambassador Sharad. Look, Smita, the thing is that, as you rightly said, Imran Khan is a mixture of many characters. He is not only, reminds us of the Aam Aadmi Party, but also a bit of Donald Trump, a bit of Erdogan, and if I may dare say so, a bit of Modi ji as well, because of the religious references that he uses. So he brings in all the populist, he touches all the populist points that Pakistanis love. Anti-Americanism, hum koi ghulam hai, we are not slaves, we are going to fight all those people. So this hyper-nationalistic streak that has been cultivated by Pakistani state for more than 7 decades, Imran is encashing that. And those, but also don't forget that Pakistan's middle class has grown tremendously in the last 2 to 3 decades. And it is also a fast urbanizing country. You see, in the Punjab, for example, half of the population, more than half of the population lives in urban conditions now. So earlier it was an agrarian rural society when Bhutto's rise we saw. Now it's a primarily urban or peri-urban society. And there Imran's message is finding more and more resonance. And as you have in India, this anti-dynastic politics sentiment. So Imran is a great proponent of that, and that also appeals to the middle class that wants to, rise up the ranks, all the people who are self-made, all who think that privilege and dynastic handouts should be avoided. So all of these factors have made him immensely popular, but in particular last 1 year, because he has also undertaken an anti-establishment political rhetoric, as well as anti-American rhetoric and lots of religious references. So they have, he has appealed to every segment. So that's what Imran Khan of today is representing. Now, the problem here is that, like any other populist, Imran Khan has obviously overestimates his power and overestimates his reach. While it is true that he has a lot of public support, but at the same time, he's also dealing with a very powerful military that has not really either retreated, despite whatever they say that we have nothing to do with politics. And the other thing is that, the military intelligence apparatus in Pakistan is intact. For a year, they were actually taking a back seat and, they thought, let him blow out his steam, let him do all the 50, 60 rallies, say things he wants to, and then he'll calm down and we'll negotiate with him or whatever. But, Imran Khan was determined that he is going to return to power this time with public support and pressure on the military. And that was not working because this new army chief in November, who was appointed, Imran Khan, was also opposing his appointment in public rallies. Now, you see, this is unprecedented. In Pakistan, yes, the prime ministers have a bit of power. Not always, they can't exercise it, but theoretically they have a power. But opposition leader has no power to appoint or dismiss an army general or the army chief. So that line he crossed actually earlier than the events of May 9th. But on May 9th, this public anger that Aisha referred to, but was also sort of highlighted by the fact that Imran Khan had built this momentum for 10, 11, 12 months, taking on the army, taking on the army chief, the previous one and the present one. And he has said so openly, as you must have seen in
But
his interviews.
Raza, can I intervene just to clarify?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
really been a case of Imran Khan taking over the entire establishment, taking on the entire establishment, or has his grudge been against certain individuals, naming an individual saying that he is the one who has been trying assassination attempts behind me? Because when he came to power, of course, for the longest time, he was criticized to be the blue-eyed boy of the army, several name calling that happened. And or more often than not, he actually said that his relationship was harmonious, that they were all on the same page. So is it really about him challenging the might of the entire army, or is it a grudge against certain specific individuals?
That's a great question, Smita. It is a grudge mostly against individuals and individuals that he likes or dislikes. So, he focuses his politics on that. But then, at a larger level, if you look at Pakistan's history, all three popular leaders, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif, and now Imran Khan, were nurtured by the military establishment. And all three turned against the military establishment in one way or the other. And all three, so, and that is a big debate that is taking place first time in Pakistan's history very openly in the mainstream media, on social media, that perhaps the military should shut down these engineering projects. Because as you know, in 2013, Imran could not really win. But in 2018, the military and the intelligence agencies tried every trick in their bags to bring him to power. So now that has happened. But May 9th was a red line for the military, and it's not just the house of the Corps commander in Lahore, which of course is a big security breach, but it is also the military installations and, the memorials for martyrs, Pakistan's militaristic culture. And I suppose in other countries as well, where, the martyrs are have a higher station and you cannot really desecrate their memorials. I mean, those particular scenes angered the army leadership as well as the rank and file. So the tables turned. Earlier, Imran had a lot of support within the institution, especially in the rank and file, because he represents the same classes that go into the army and bureaucracy. Now, with May 9 events, what has happened is the tables have turned, and that has given the army leadership the kind of carte blanche to undertake this massive crackdown on PTI. So as we speak, the PTI is being dismantled. Its leaders are leaving. Thousands of its workers are in jail. Its prominent, journalists and anchors and social media YouTubers, etc., who are pro-PTI are also under, both, not just in jail, but they are being monitored. So the intelligence apparatus is back in full form. That earlier. And I think one last thing I'd like to add is that, other than these physical attacks, now you see that is particular, that is what we see and what we hear about the government's narrative. But underneath there were also murmurs and rumors by supporters of Imran Khan that, there is going to be an internal coup, a mutiny within the army. Now, you see, that particular thing, I think, is the ultimate red line that his party and his supporters crossed, because as you all know, Pakistan's army, whatever its policies have been in the past, it's a very strong, disciplined institution, and it is never, even those who may like Imran Khan or love his political narrative, would never allow any such dissension to take place, and that is why he's being taught a lesson as we
I think that's putting it very clearly, and I will go back to Aisha for more on that. But let me just get in Ambassador Sabharwal here. Ambassador Sabharwal, as you see the events unfold from here, what is your sense? Has Imran Khan managed to spearhead, sow the seeds of any kind of a change when it comes to the civil-military imbalance, the course correction, or do you think he has punched above his weight?
Well, I think what is happening, Pakistan has many fault lines, and the mother of all fault lines is the civil military imbalance and continuous interference of the army in political affairs. And what we are seeing today is the result of that fault line, more specifically of the political engineering that Qamar Javed Bajwa indulged in all 6 years of his tenure. First getting Nawaz Sharif disqualified through a dubious accountability process, then bringing in Imran Khan, then getting him out by manipulating smaller parties beholden to the army, and then bringing in finally the Shahbaz Sharif government. And that's where we are. I don't think we are seeing a complete reversal of civil military imbalance in favor of the civilians or correction of that imbalance. That I believe will be a process and not an event. But something has changed, I must tell you, my own observation. Aside from the other panelists spoke of the changes in the Pakistani society, larger middle class, more urbanization, younger people who like Imran Khan and his narrative, etc., etc. When I was there in the 90s as Deputy High Commissioner, people were reluctant, politicians I spoke to, were reluctant to speak against the army or of the army, even in closed door meetings. Let someone be recording the conversation and report them to the powers that be. That, I believe, started changing at the turn of the century. And I think 2 or 3 things contributed to it. One, of course, is the increasing sign of failure of the policies that the army had foisted on Pakistan. After all, they have been running Pakistan's security and external relations with all important countries. So these were policies coined and crafted by the army, and their failure was seen, increasingly. And second was, of course, the media revolution, and not only media revolution. So from PTV and Pakistan radio, we went to a large number of private channels and the social media, internet, etc., and freer flow of information. So the net result is that, look, army has been down and out earlier also, notably in 1971. And then there have been other events. When Musharraf departed, the army rule was very unpopular. The army was unpopular. It took his successor, Kayani, some time to recover that image. So it has happened earlier. But the extent and ferocity of violence that followed Imran Khan's arrest on May 9 was something unprecedented. That, of course, has invited a crackdown and action by the army. A large number of leaders, as has been explained earlier, have been arrested. Many of them are quitting the party. And I must tell you, I find it interesting that the party is being dismantled, PTI, by the army as fast as it was built 2011 onwards. I was High Commissioner then, and Imran Khan's career since the founding of his party in 1996 was not going anywhere, political career. He had won probably a lone seat for himself in one election. He had boycotted another election. Suddenly, he is picked up by the army. Crowds grow in his rallies. A large number of politicians, and many of them who had prospered during army rule, gravitate towards him. And now the reverse process is on. It seems that we are talking of divisions within the army and so on. Dr. Siddiqa and Raza Rumi would be better in a better position to tell us what sort of divisions there might be that still prevail. But on the surface of it, it seems that Asim Munir has consolidated his position, because after all, sitting here, we saw a special conference of corps commanders giving a unified message after May 9. That was an affront that the army couldn't tolerate. And I believe that army is like a citadel from which its rank and file draw all their perks and privileges. So if they see that citadel being breached, even by a popular civilian, they would stand together. They would tend to support their chief, and that may be happening now. So as I said, the reverse process is on. There are some imponderables there. The Chief Justice is still acting independently, although I believe his authority has been seriously compromised. So to sum up, and as was mentioned earlier again, all creations of the army, whether Zulfikar Ali Bhutto or Nawaz Sharif or Imran Khan, they all turned against the army. Nawaz Sharif spoke against the army sitting in the comfort of London. Imran Khan has been doing it sitting within Pakistan. So these are subtle changes. Maybe that process is on, but I don't think we are anywhere close to complete redressal of the civil-military violence.
Okay, I think you've made a lot of important points. In another 5 minutes, I will start taking in the audience questions. I already see some raised hands. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box, or if you want, I can allow you to speak directly and ask the questions. But, Aisha, coming to some of the points raised by Ambassador Sabharwal, do you have a sense, and this is a question that I would like Raza also to come in before I go to the audience, that General Munir is now in control? Is it really a united house? Does he have the loyalty of the generals? Are there fissures below? There were a lot of Pakistani media reports that seem to suggest that Imran Khan actually does enjoy a certain amount of support, maybe within the lower ranks of the ranks and files. What is your sense of how basically dented is the Pakistan army at this point in time?
See, if you look at the way media is going about it, I mean, you have on different television channels, mostly private, state media itself is showing, I mean, their new songs, their videos, and backed by the sitting government. By the new partners are the PPP and the PMLN. Let's not forget. So every time a change is made, military brings in, has to partner with civilians. And this time it's back to PPP and PMLN together. I mean, two parties that it once pushed out. So what they're doing is their advertisement, their posters, they are on highways, their flyers, which eulogize the army, its contribution, the contribution of martyrs, what they do for security, etc., etc. Now, I'm sure people in India are not unfamiliar with these kind of images of eulogizing of the army. So, but this is happening because, and this, what this indicates is that army as an institution has come together and has decided that the way PTI had gone after it is something damaging. And if there was a dissent within the army, it wasn't just concentrated at the lower ranks, it was also within the generals, from what one has heard. Now that divide has been bridged, as far as the military is concerned. But let me go back to May 9th for a second. I think the mistake, there were two things which were happening side by side. Three things. One, you had the hardcore PTI supporters, which were angry, which said, come what may, we are going to push back. But these are people, some of them might have, had this idea of going as far as they could, but most of them didn't think that they would be going around burning buildings and doing the kind of violence which actually happened. I mean, let's not forget, a lot of this upper middle class or middle class was with him from Lahore. Let me focus, for example, on one city where he was located at that point in time, Lahore. I mean, these were children of elite. I mean, let me give you one example of Khadija Shah. I mean, this is a woman who came out with a video message saying that, she stood by Imran and she didn't want to attack the army, but she was part of the protest. And guess what? I mean, members of the Lahori elite from PMLN, people like, they were supporting her. They were trying to hide her. They were trying to protect her. Who is she? She's Salman Shah's daughter. Salman Shah was Musharraf's finance minister. She's granddaughter of General Asif Nawaz Jandua. So there was that divide. But going back to my point, so there was this segment which was limited in number, but who still went out on the call that they have to take some action. Then you had disgruntled, genuine, support for whatever was happening, and they wanted to push back the military. I mean, this was an event which is probably not going to happen so fast, so soon in Pakistan. And I think May 9th is important in many ways historically. It will remain important because this is when people did express their anger against the military. Let's not, I mean, that anger is real. So now the thing is that there are two issues here. One is, yes, for temporarily, for the time being, military has come together. It is actually putting spotlight on the damage which PTI did to bring its own cadres together and say, look, this is how your image is being brought down. So that will bring them together. But I think that's one part of the issue. The other more important part of the problem is the people. The army chief, I don't think has an understanding. I mean, he's a well-trained general, but he's like any average well-trained general who looks at the tactics and finds a tactical response to something which has happened. He doesn't have the strategic view of how to deal with Pakistan's politics and with people getting disgruntled, and that in masses. You can't, as Paul Stanley, the political scientist, says, you can't really get rid of the masses, and that's where the problem lies.
But, and I'll go to Mudassir next. He has his hands raised. I'll allow him to ask the question. Raza, just quickly come in here, because what explains, I see a dichotomy. On the one hand, if there is this genuine anger that Aisha is talking about, does it really translate into a support necessarily for Imran Khan? Because at the end of the day, it's not like Imran Khan proved to be a successful prime minister. The country was left behind in economic shambles. There was the issues, challenges arising from the COVID handling of the economic mismanagement. So what explains the support that Imran Khan today enjoys really, in the sections? There are the Sharifs, there is Birawar Bhutto. So what is it that people are finding more appealing in Imran Khan?
So I think, you're absolutely right. His record in office was far from, satisfactory. In fact, in many ways, it was terrible. But I think here, Smita, one has to also understand that, this has been an ongoing process. These doors were opened by Nawaz Sharif earlier, whose party, being a very central Punjab, very pro-military party, turned into this big, defender of civil liberties and civil supremacy. And that particular opening is something that Imran Khan also learned from the playbook, that he realized and his supporters realized that basically, if you were to do a popular politics, it would have to be an anti-establishment politics. And you would have to ask the military to go back to the barracks and stop meddling and engineering in political affairs. And that's the message that Imran has effectively, through his daily address to the nation and through his huge social media infrastructure, has conveyed it to his supporters. Now, their anger is, and that's what we saw, some demonstration of that. But also, there are reports that this was also a well-orchestrated plan, that if they were going to arrest Imran Khan, because they had not arrested him thus far, last time when they came to arrest him at his residence, there were scenes of violence. The police was attacked. There were petrol bombs thrown from his residence. Earlier, whenever he was summoned by the courts, he went in with thousands of people who broke open the gates of the, and the judges, they were. So these are all intimidation tactics. Now, this time they said, okay, if they're going to arrest him, we are going to go and protest, right? And that's why all the protests on May 9th were against military installations. No civilian building, no civilian symbol of power was addressed. The Askari Tower in Lahore, the Corps Commander's house, the memorial, etc., etc. So it was a very carefully thought out, orchestrated plan as the government says, and there are signs of that happening too. Yeah.
Okay, Ambassador Sabharwal, a quick point, and then I'll let Mudassir ask his question.
Yeah, just very quickly, 2-3 points in the context of what we have been discussing. Look, in spite of all the public anger against the army, all that has happened, the fact remains that the army still remains front and center in the calculations of all political actors. The government, Shahbaz Sharif government, the party's constituents of it, and even Imran Khan. I mean, he was asking the support of the establishment, the army, to get him an early election. And when he didn't get that, he became more and more bitter against them. One. Two, the confrontation, which is going to take place now, this is inevitable when you dismantle a whole party, that would need a greater role for the army, probably behind a civilian facade to control the situation, greater than they might have been playing till now. But lastly, this doesn't solve Pakistan's problems. If you again have a managed election, today we also heard, I read a report somewhere that the Election Commission of Pakistan told the Supreme Court that because of the May 9 events, it's difficult to say whether elections can be held even in October. So if elections are postponed or when they take place, they are managed, this would be a repeat of what has been happening in Pakistan. And as it has been said earlier, this builds anger amongst people. So all this will then pave the way for even a bigger crisis at some later stage.
So it's like a hamster wheel. Aisha, yes, you wanted to
Yeah, very quickly. Let me go back to the question which you asked, Raza. Why are people supporting Imran Khan? No doubt about it. I mean, he is a very flawed politician, more flawed than others. I mean, no doubt about that. But the fact is that half of it, the people support is, kind of love for Imran Khan. I mean, I've seen very silly commentaries on Pakistan media saying that it's women who fell in love with him, while they were young, etc., etc. It's part of it. But there are women, working class women, beggars. I mean, actually, beggars in South Punjab, women, who said this time, we're going to vote for Imran. So there is something else also behind their support for Imran. Not necessarily love for this man, but also an anxiety and frustration with what the system had presented. And suddenly, I think every day, people are realizing more than yesterday that it's the military which is kind of keeping this very unhealthy, unhappy system together.
Yes, I think there has been that long-standing disillusionment for sure with the way things have been happening. Mudassir, please go ahead. You've been waiting for a long time. Tell us who your question is for and keep it brief if you can.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. It is a great honor that I am speaking in front of Aisha Siddiqa, a great intellectual, and others also. So it is a very proud moment for me. Ma'am, actually, I am from India, Kashmir. So I'm a teacher of political science. So my question, there are two questions regarding this. So first question is that what is the impact of this political crisis of Pakistan on India's political landscape? Because we know the concept of spillover effect. Is there any scope for spillover effect on India's political landscape? Second question is related with this is that what is China's favorable position in Pakistan? Do they support establishment or do they support democratic setup? Because I have not heard any Chinese stand on Pakistan crisis. They may be having their stance, but I have not heard that stance yet. What is their stand? Okay. What is their favorable option in Pakistan?
Okay, thank you so much. Good questions. Let me start by the first part. Would Ambassador Sabharwal, would you like to go with that on the spillover effect for India and the political landscape here?
Well, I don't know how long we have, but very, very briefly, I think one immediate impact, and I'm talking the implications of what is happening in Pakistan for India. And one immediate impact is that it reinforces the factors that rule out a serious engagement, meaningful engagement between the two countries for the time being. I think a thaw would be possible only after things settle down in Pakistan and India is through with its elections in 2024, whichever is later. Now, there have been different reactions in India, if I may say so. There are those who predict collapse of Pakistan, as they have done during every major crisis. There are others who say that when Pakistan is internally absorbed, it impairs the ability of their establishment to trouble us. And there is not so noticeable a trend of people who try to see what a collapse of a nuclear armed neighbor would mean for India. So I think it's true that a self-absorbed Pakistan, it helps us in the short run, but it would be a different ballgame altogether if Pakistan were to move towards a collapse. Let me hasten to add, I don't think Pakistan is moving towards a collapse. I think it will continue its journey, a little messy journey as it has before, at least in the foreseeable future. But imagine the impact of a collapse, implications for India. It will present us with a sea of unbridled sea of religious extremism and terrorism, starting with the western frontier of Afghanistan right up to our western border. Uncertainty, perilous uncertainty about the nuclear arsenal of Pakistan in an unstable situation. Of course, a large number of people fleeing unrest towards India because of the easy border in the plains. So I think India's posture in the past has been not to express any preference who rules Pakistan. India has dealt with whoever has been thrown up by Pakistan's internal dynamics, including military dictators, because you have to engage with a neighbor. I think that's the policy that should continue. But my only last point would be that regardless of what happens to the Pakistani state, we have to live and deal with the people of Pakistan, in whichever state they are, in Pakistan of today, or as some people would say, a state that has collapsed, or in any other configuration. But these are people we have to live and deal with. So I have always said we should make a distinction between the Pakistani people and the establishment, not lump them with the actions of their establishment and our responses to those actions.
Okay, Aisha, would you like to come in on the second part on the Chinese reaction to this? And maybe you could add if there are any signals from the Americans too. The next question is a question in the chat box for Raza.
Yeah. See, the thing is that China has been silent because China and the United States and the UK and many other countries have been watching, not interfering, not even sympathizing. They don't want to interfere because what the American concern was, for the first time, it was echoed at CENTCOM in Tampa, Florida, was that they were worried for a few seconds, they were worried because they don't want to see a weak army in Pakistan. They want a strong establishment who can stand up for their interests when and if required. Same goes for China. I mean, look, as far as China is concerned, Imran Khan is not a favorite because in his first couple of years, Imran Khan's government, if not Imran Khan, single-handedly stopped and really stopped the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project under the guise of corruption, changing, emphasis of investment, etc., etc. So first 2 years, CPEC was stopped. So China, and then in his last year, he reached out to China. But I don't think Chinese are interested. Chinese, right before May 9th, in fact, General Asim Munir visited China, and he really gained a lot of confidence from that visit. This morning, I've heard that as the IMF bailout is getting delayed, China is going to provide more rollover of its earlier debt, which means that China is filling the shoes, it's helping. So it would be inclined towards an establishment that can keep Pakistani state stable. I don't think, I mean, China, which has a Uyghur problem, etc., wouldn't bother. So I think international, to answer Mudassir Bhatt Saab, I don't think that China or the international community at large, West or East, uh, I think there was greater sympathy for Imran Khan in India and within the Indian
Hmm.
establishment than anywhere else around the world. That's one. And just very briefly on what it means for India's landscape. I mean, I really wondered what the question meant in terms of landscape. People rising. I'm sure people will learn about rising, and we're two countries who have, in our own respects, authoritarian governments, and that's how it will stay. I don't see one affecting the other.
Okay. Reza, the next question is from Umar Iqbal, who's a PhD scholar. What are your views on the geopolitical implications of Pakistan's current situation with its neighbors, particularly India and Afghanistan?
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, partly it has already been addressed earlier, but I think the current situation obviously is a matter of concern for Pakistan's friends and foes alike. For the friends, as Aisha outlined, China in particular, the United States and the Western Bloc, they don't want to see a weakened army or the weakened establishment. For decades, they have worked through them and with them. As you know, all military dictators in Pakistan were propped up and fully supported with lots of cash and arms by the US. So that's our clear history. And of course, they don't have any security interests at the moment. So, these days, Pakistan is not really that hot of a topic in Washington, D.C. or other Western capitals. But as regards, Afghanistan, obviously, it is vital that Pakistan's engagement with Afghanistan and the Taliban, requires that Pakistan should have some modicum of stability. At the moment, Pakistan, for the last at least 1 year, has been undergoing this terrible domestic turmoil, which has impacted its economy, which has impacted its prospects as well as its foreign policy engagement. I mean, how do you go and engage with the world when you are fighting at home 24/7? And so obviously, its Afghanistan policy is going to be impacted. As regards India, I really don't think that there will be any major difference, because I mean, we already have a very unfortunately, I would add, a cold storage bilateral relationship, and which needs to be revived. And I think one particular aspect that we have not really talked about is that the former army chief, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, was extremely serious about a shift in India policy. I know it on good authority through my sources that he wanted to make a new beginning, and that's very interesting. Pakistan's powerful military chiefs, while they direct the country towards a particular line on India and Kashmir, but when they're in power and in command, they want different policy, just like Musharraf, for example. But General Bajwa's intent could not be materialized because Imran Khan was strongly and staunchly against any such overtures, because he thought that, he would face a popular backlash in Pakistan, especially after the end of Article 370 and whatever happened on August 5. So that was also one of the reasons that they fell out. One of the long list of their divorce, General Bajwa and Imran Khan, one of the reasons was also this critical difference on India policy. And I believe that the current army chief, I mean, there is an institutional decision now that, they, and partly it has to do with Pakistan's economy, partly it has to do with the Western pressure, that certainly the Pakistan military wants some level of normalization. I'm not saying that they're going to go and reopen trade or make some big overtures. And now that is a big, and that's a big sea change. That's also a transformative moment, because you see, earlier we knew that the deep state in Pakistan was not at all ready to push any kind of ties with India, you know. But now I believe things are a bit different.
Let me get in Ambassador
Can I,
Sabharwal
can
on
I, can I?
this. Yes, Aisha.
Yeah, very briefly, if I could, before the ambassador gets it. I think that the present general is not ready, not prepared for improving relations with India. Reason being that, firstly, I don't see that he sees any clear benefits coming out at the moment. I mean, the writing on the wall is 2024 elections. Before 2024 elections in India, nothing is going to substantial is going to move, unless Pakistan, there is evidence that Pakistan would sit on the table on India's terms. So that way, he doesn't have much to gain, number one. Number two, I think politically, he needs to strengthen himself. He needs another 1.5, a year and a half at least to establish himself. And during that period, he needs to have this image of a strong general who is not getting pushed around by India. So I don't see that even from a military perspective, anything is going to go forward. So that's the other thing. As far as Afghanistan, which was also part of the question asked to Raza, not to me, I think, again, it remains the same. There will be support for the Taliban, trying to bring in resources, trying to get support and try to get the international community to help to have a deal with the Taliban. That support is going to continue. TTP, the bigger question is TTP. I don't think that the army is ready to take on the TTP militarily. They will deal through the Afghan Taliban, and this is where relations stand.
Ambassador Sabharwal, if I could just add a point or two before you come in, and then I'll take the questions that are popping up on the chat box. Because on the one hand, while you do see that, as Raza said, that perhaps there were more Indians who felt for Imran Khan than Americans who would rather bat for the army there. But on the other hand, you also have an Imran Khan who was trying to take a hardline position on a lot of things to do with India. And then you have this Indian sort of sense that if Imran Khan manages to shake up the army, it is not a bad thing at all, because while India wouldn't want to see Pakistan collapse, it would be in India's interest to see if the Pakistan army at least is weakened in the sense that it stops calling the shots continuously from behind the scenes on everything from national security to strategy. So within these contradictions, how do you feel Imran Khan sort of, would come forward with an opportunity to reset ties with India if he were to come back to power? There is that element also of the support that he enjoys from the Taliban, from the Pakistan Taliban.
Look, he's been called Taliban Khan. As I said, it's for the people of Pakistan to decide who governs Pakistan. I don't think we should have any preferences. Having said that, he's been called Taliban Khan. For example, I heard him before his political star started rising, 2009, addressing a group of ambassadors, and I was present amongst them. He said, look, the policies that army is following in our tribal belt will create enmities for 7 generations. So this is what the Pashtuns would do. And therefore, I oppose that policy. That was his thought. Then when he came to power, he negotiated with TTP. He wasn't the only one doing it, because PPP government in 2009 issued this Nizam-e-Adl regulation to set up Sharia courts in Malakand division under pressure from militant elements there. Or Nawaz Sharif, when he came to power in 2013, his first impulse of his government was to talk to these elements, religious extremists and terrorists and so on, until that attack took place on a school in Peshawar, and then things turned. So that is, I interacted with him after his political star started rising. And I must say, I didn't find his discourse during those interactions very different from that of others. The desire to improve relationship, but the Kashmir baggage was there. Something has to be done about it, etc., etc. And also an eye on what the army wants. So in that sense, he was, the same discourse. He had the same discourse that the other political leaders in Pakistan have. The only leader I would put in a slightly different category, is Nawaz Sharif, because he has shown practically on the ground, he has tried repeatedly, and he's been bold enough to try repeatedly to improve relations with India, only to be thwarted by his army each time. So I think what happened was when his government came to power, we had been dealing with Nawaz Sharif. Prime Minister Modi had made a short halt in Lahore, etc., etc. And, probably there were expectations of things moving forward. And then suddenly you have this upheaval, Nawaz Sharif is gone, Imran Khan comes in. Then our policy, terror and talks cannot go together. And thereafter, things nosedived. So there was no dialogue with his government. We agreed, I think, in September 2018 to have a meeting between the foreign ministers, but that fell through the next day because we canceled that meeting. Then when came August 5, 2019, Imran Khan he was cornered. He had no effective answer to the Indian move. And he took some decisions which boxed Pakistan into a corner. He canceled trade, which was against Pakistan's own interest. It hurt India much less than it hurt Pakistan. And then he asked for reversal of that step, which is an impossible condition. And I think from there on, there was no scope of any engagement with government. Bajwa's, wanting to improve the relationship. Look, we have seen tactical adjustments. I don't know how serious and what he was willing to do, but we have seen tactical adjustments in the posture of the Pakistani establishment from time to time under internal compulsions, and also don't forget the Financial Action Task Force. That is
even General Kiani actually made a lot of these statements. I remember, when there were delegations being taken out to NWFP and stuff, he was sending out those feelers to the Indian media. No, look, I was told by some top Pakistani businessmen that they went to the military leadership, which meant General Kiani and Ahmad Shuja Pasha, who was the DG ISI, and that they explained to them that it would be in Pakistan's interest to open up trade with India. This was the only way of adding a bit to Pakistan's GDP growth, etc., etc. One of the important ways, and that they had been given a green signal, but So there are always these tactical adjustments, but are we going to move towards a strategic situation where Pakistan changes? There are many imponderables there. The position on Kashmir, when we have tried to resolve it, the back channel understandings. When I was High Commissioner, we tried to repeatedly emphasize upon Pakistan, let's take them forward. But they didn't show the courage to do that. We'll do it today, we'll do it tomorrow. We are consulting stakeholders, we'll do it after our elections. And then new government comes in India and they withdraw the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, with which Pakistan has nothing to do. They have been questioning the very accession of Jammu and Kashmir to India. So how are they concerned with 370? And suddenly, then objections start to that. So a permanent change would demand many more signals than just the desire to improve relationship, which has remained tactical on many of them. Okay, I think that answers the questions. A lot of questions put in the chat box by Dr. Bashir Ahmed. What are the ground realities in India-Pak relation, and how can relations be improved in Pakistan? No sign of that at the moment, because till 2024 general elections don't happen until Pakistan doesn't clear up its own internal turmoil. There really is no sign. So in the last 10-15 minutes, I'm just going to focus now on what happens next. Dr. Siddiqa, in a recent article, I know you argued that this is not comparable, what is happening within Pakistan, to people coming out in support to prevent a military coup against an Erdogan, or civilians protesting in Myanmar. So this is not that kind of a protest movement. Do you see this protest keeping up in terms of the momentum, or do you see it dying down over the next few days or weeks itself?
See, there are two things. One is that I don't see, when it happened, when May 9th happened, it was sporadic. I didn't see then a Tahrir Square. Militaries like political armies always seek legitimacy, and they really get scared when people come out in masses. We didn't see masses. People came out, but didn't come out in numbers. I don't see that number game happening now, especially the way the leadership, when the party is being, I eventually see, and it's already happening in the process, that you have a king without a party. The party is going away. But let's also not forget that when all of these people are being presented in front of the media, you can visibly see duress, signs of duress. Like Malaika Bukhari, one of the members, she was in tears. Shiri Mazari left under pressure. So people are being pressured, and this is not good symbolism. This is something which may not necessarily result in getting Imran Khan back, but it's definitely something which is going to get deposited in the psyche of people. Now there's going to be frustration. I don't think that, I think what I see happening in the next 3, 4, 5 years is that he will be disqualified. They will try to silence him. I'm sure somebody must be negotiating exile. They're not going to send him into exile in a country like the UK, for instance, or anywhere in Europe where he can speak up. He's not another Altaf Hussain. He has much greater potential, let's not forget, than Altaf Hussain had. Altaf Hussain, his focus was just one community, one ethnic community in Pakistan. Imran Khan is incidentally or unfortunately, he has a bigger outreach. So you can't send him into exile unless there is a guarantee that his phone will be taken away, thrown somewhere for a few months. No tweeting, no Facebook, no Instagram, silence. This is what the military wants to do with him. His party is going to be broken up, sent into either the PPP, shoved into PMLN, PMLQ, somewhere else, or given another leader. From what I've heard and what I see, I think what is happening is also very undesirable and very sad and tragic, because a party like the Pakistan People's Party and its leader Bilawal Bhutto has said that he's going to support a ban PTI. Extremely unfortunate and I would say pathetic. Not good for the political process and political future of Pakistan that way, vis-a-vis the military. Military is pushing back so strongly that it's they now have a back to the full size in terms of political strength. But one last thing which I would want to point out is that Imran is going to become a symbol. And let's not forget that people will forgive his sins. Bhutto, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, let's not forget. He was a very problematic prime minister. I'm afraid to say. Yet, the one thing which people remembered about him was his sacrifice. Now, granted that Imran Khan does not compare with Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in terms of the risks that Bhutto took. But what I'm trying to say is that the way the establishment has dealt with the entire crisis, it will take us in a direction where he will symbolically become a hero. And you have a diaspora which is going to be absolutely angry. You are going to have a lot of people inside Pakistan who are going to be upset. There's a youth. 64% of Pakistan's population today is from 18 to 35. this is a generation, and you know what Raza pointed out, greater urbanization, etc., but even in rural areas, you have a generation which expected far more. And if you're going to bring them back to the same old system of the last 70 years, I'm sure they don't have the power to dismantle. And the problem is that there is no leadership. So that frustration itself is going to be very unhealthy for Pakistan's politics and society.
Okay, I think that's a very sort of an important landscape that you've painted for us on what to expect moving forward, which also kind of answers, one of the participants, anonymous participants had asked that can Imran Khan possibly return to power? Raza Rumi, if I could come, the last sort of remarks, because Dr. Mushtaq Ahmed Rather, he's an assistant professor in political science in Srinagar, Kashmir. He asks that the Pakistan army has been shaping the identity of the country, and the army's way has been Pakistan's way. Do you think that Pakistan is likely to remain, as always, in the possession of the army, or you think that it will encourage people to question the role of military in Pak politics? Your concluding remarks on this, and do you think that Imran Khan's future at the moment seems completely decimated, even if he turns out to be a hero?
Yes, thank you, Smita. Well, first of all, I think as regards Pakistan's civil-military relations, so I think we have already discussed briefly earlier that, things will not be the usual anymore, because you see, the Pakistan's political elites and political parties, one by one, have challenged the military at certain junctures, then of course gotten back with them, made up with them to acquire power or share power with them, as the current ruling coalition is doing. But it's no longer the military dicta of 1980s or earlier, where the military can just make or break things that easily. It's not, and the reason is, of course, the kind of public awareness, the rise of social media, the younger population, etc., etc. I mean, it's a different country altogether. Of course, these structural transformations take decades and decades. They don't come overnight. So I think there is a possibility, and there are openings. Imran Khan's, whether one agrees with his politics or not, I think he has done a great favor to the cause of Pakistan's civil society by kind of sensitizing his followers, earlier apolitical or depoliticized followers, about the importance or the reality of civil-military relations. So that must be acknowledged. Having said that, Imran Khan's future certainly at this stage does not look really bright. Or somebody asked if will he come back as PM in the Q&A. I don't really think that it is going to happen in the short to medium term, because if you look at the earlier, if history is to be looked at, Nawaz Sharif had to wait out for a term, Benazir Bhutto had to wait out for a term. That's been the standard thing. The other thing that Imran Khan's, politics and his so-called popularity, one always overlooks, is the sympathy within the Pakistani system that the state that he enjoys. The judges, some of the judges have openly been favoring him. Some of the personnel within the military, retired and serving, have been favoring him. After May 9th, those particular groups have taken a backseat, or have been, at least, through the public pressure, etc., been pushed aside. So in a way, Imran Khan's, future both looks uncertain, but it'll be a time for him to reflect and maybe build a proper political party with cadres. You see, because on May 9th, I just want to add what was being discussed earlier, the total number of people that have been identified by Pakistan's National Database Registration Authority and the police is not more than 40,000 people across the country. It's a country of 240 million people. And if you were to look at the total number of people who were around these military installations done through geofencing and other technological tools, it's about 40,000, out of which they've identified about more than 30, and they were made arrests of 8 to 10,000 thus far. So it's not a big number. It's not a people's revolution happening. It's just a very targeted, well orchestrated, highly mediatized, and highly promoted kind of event, which of course, as you saw on the Indian screens and in the Indian media, mainstream media, was having a field day because you see all these things were being attacked.
India always has a field day when it comes to
Always has a
Pakistan.
field day.
Today there's a meme out on social media where a man is seen watching TV and the anchor comes and says, "Khabar Pakistan ki," and this man goes and slaps the anchor and says, "India mein ho, India ki khabar dikha diya karo."
Yes,
So
exactly.
anyways, having said
So-
that, let me just ask a last question to Ambassador Sabharwal. Because, you know, on the one hand, while it's very clear that short to medium term, we will not perhaps see Imran Khan return, even if though there may be electorally a good prospect of him winning elections. But you have the Sharifs, you have the Zardaris, the Bhuttos. Over the decades, they have gone from being hand in gloves with the establishment to being confrontational to quoting them back, living in exile to negotiating, not to forget the assassination of Benazir Bhutto itself. With these, the PPP, the PMLA and Ambassador Sabharwal, as we end, do you see their current stance, which Aisha criticized, that, you know, if they are supporting a ban on PTI, it is to be condemned. Do you think that they will work more in tandem with the army, or will there still be some attempts at trying to restructure the way things are within Pakistan?
Well, look, Imran Khan has said in many of his statements that all that he wants is free and fair elections. Now, he's saying the right thing for the wrong reason. For the wrong reason because he's no paragon of democracy. Let's be clear that 2011 onwards, he was built by the army. 2018, he won with a supporting, more than a supporting hand from the army. But he's saying the right thing. That's the only solution. Have free and fair elections, let the people choose a government which functions for 5 years and then is judged by the people again, as it happens in any other democracy. That, I'm afraid, the way things are moving is not likely to happen. And what we may see is, down the line elections, whenever they come in October, a little later, maybe managed elections. Because if you rule out a whole political party and a leader who has a large popularity amongst people, you have to manage those elections. That is a managed election in any case, when you push out one party altogether, like they had done in 2018, incarcerated 2 star campaigners of PMLN, which is Nawaz Sharif and his daughter. So that, as I said earlier, continues to build up anger. That doesn't solve anything. It's more of what has happened in Pakistan in the past. And that will sow the seeds of a bigger crisis later on. I'm afraid that is what is happening. As to, you asked me about these parties. As I said earlier, regardless of the anger against the army remains front and center in the calculations of all political players. Negatively now for Imran Khan, but it's there in their calculations. It remains a force to reckon with. And second point that I made was that if things continue to be unstable, the army will have a greater role, at least in controlling the situation and keeping things calm and in order. And likely behind a civilian facade. I don't think people talk of their taking over, etc. I don't know why they would do that when they can function through a civilian facade. And why
I think that's been clear for a while now, that the army doesn't want to take the seat directly as long as it calls the shots from behind.
So in the short run, foreseeable future, I think we'll continue to see instability and the same old civil military imbalance. But a point which has been made earlier, which I also made in my first intervention, was that something is changing. The army is being questioned in an unprecedented manner. We should take note of that. There is a sizable constituency which questions the army's policies and so on. But I would repeat what I said earlier, that the redressal of civil military imbalance will not be an event, but it will be a process. If it happens, and largely because of internal pressures, cannot be imposed from outside.
I think when you look at Imran Khan's love and now hate relationship with the establishment, there is a couplet that said, "Jaan kahun tumhe ya dushmane jaani kahun," is the kind of confusion. But I think from just to conclude from what we have discussed today, it's very clear that this is, of course, an internal mess that Pakistan and Pakistanis need to sort themselves. For every other player, it will only be a wait and watch. But of course, when you have a disgruntled countryman at your doorstep as a neighbor, it is of concern. So it is an issue that will continue to worry India. But for now, of course, it looks like Imran Khan has been cut to size, or at least the process will be on to cut him to size, because he has crossed, of course, some Lakshman Rekhas were crossed, and some changes, important changes happening. The very fact that people are coming to the media talking about the army openly, that does in fact indicate some changes happening within the Pakistani structure, because the angst of people, as Aisha also pointed out, Razarimi pointed out, the angst and anger of the people is genuine at the decades of sort of misgovernance, misadministration that has happened, and with not elected but selected governments being popped up every now and then. I'm going to end this conversation here. For all those who were in the room talking to us, asking your questions, many thanks for joining us. A reminder, it's a master's degree in public policy at the Kautilya School of Public Policy. If you're wanting to explore a career in that avenue, please do look up the curriculum. And thank you so much, Ambassador Sabharwal in New Delhi, Dr. Aisha Siddiqa in London, and Raza Rumi, Professor Rumi in US. Thank you so much for your time. This has been lovely talking to all of you.